The issue I'm having with this one is that I don't know when we should count them as being reincarnated. Like, do I do it after they get hangnailed by Kurama? Or do I also count the time they spent with Naruto before going to heaven? See, if I do the latter, it could be an interesting story, but might wrap up too quickly. If I do the former, though, they will have more time to unravel the mystery, but far less will be affected. If I do the previous, it'll likely be nothing more than what if Minato and Kushina survived, which is a fun concept, but I think we actually told that story already. This is a tough decision. Okay, I've made up my mind. We're going to give Kushina and Minato their memories from after being impaled, including their time in helping Naruto control the Nine Tails, as well as their time in the Fourth Shinobi World War. I feel like this is just an all-around better idea. Let's just hope Minato doesn't wrap it up too quickly. Welcome to the Amagi. Before we begin, only 25% of our viewers are subscribed, so if you're a fan of the video, please like and double check if you are subscribed, and with that out of the way, let's get into the video. Don't worry, I'll tell her about everything. These were the last words to be spoken by Minato to his son. As he broke the cage of the imperfect world reincarnation jutsu, his body crumbling to loose paper, his soul was slowly rising into the air. He was given just enough time to hear this quick yet erratic conversation Naruto was having. Naruto, realizing he wouldn't see his father again for quite some time, was trying to fit in years' worth of catch-up in the span of a few short seconds. This was such a bittersweet ending, but better than their first interaction. Minato thought back on it, the day of Pain's attack on the leaf, Naruto giving into the Nine Tails. He remembered his own appearance being met with a swift punch to the gut. Minato knew he deserved that, but now he was feeling a different type of punch to the gut. It was the knowledge that, at least for a time, what Minato hoped to be a long and prosperous time, he would not see his son again. But he didn't cry. He had just received a wonderful gift, and he knew it couldn't last forever. He was existing outside of the rules of life and death, and he couldn't stay in this state forever. But this one gift, to be able to not only speak with, but fight alongside Naruto, to be able to see the man he might turn into, it was a beautiful gift, and he was so thankful to have gotten to experience it. As he now ascended to the sky, leaving this dimension for one outside of time and space, he saw the light. Whispering his thanks into that light, he heard a voice from within his heart speak. "I have one more gift for you," the voice said. "Are you ready for it?" Minato, startled by the generosity of his creator, smiled. "Yes, I am ready." And a moment later, Minato awakened. He awakened in his home, in the leaf. At first, he was confused. Was this limbo, or some sort of state of remembrance? What was this? He felt his body, all of the feelings he had not felt since the impure world reincarnation. His skin had warmth. Honestly, it was a bit jarring to be back in a true physical form, something he had not had for 17 years. There were aches present that normally his mind hid in a blind spot. He never realized that there were subtle pains to living, each neuron and nerve ending firing continuously just to make sure that he was alive. He was painfully aware. Looking at the calendar for a moment, and then at himself in the mirror, he realized the truth. He was back in his old body. This was the past. It was as if everything he did never happened, and to some degree, he felt almost indignant about it. All that hard work and suffering was for nothing? Wait, no. He looked at the situation again through another lens. Remembering all that happened, that was said, he thought about this new gift he was given, and through that lens, he smiled. This is a chance to do something different, a happier ending. Minato, filled with joy, opened the blinds of his apartment and basked in the warm sunlight. "Good morning, Konoha!" he shouted at his window. All the people below must have thought him mad, but to Minato, this was a chance to have the things he always wanted, to do the things he never got to do, like live past age 24. That was a tragedy, to be frank. And now he had the chance to maybe get old enough to have a gray hair. Jumping out the window with glee and excitement, he found that his body was somewhat awkward. There was less strength in these muscle fibers than he had when he was in his older body, but that was nothing a little extra movement couldn't fix. It gave him time to improve, and with all the knowledge he had accumulated in the years he spent sealed, the years he spent fighting, he was sure to nearly be the greatest shinobi of his era right now. The mere benefit of extra knowledge was enough to put him over the top, but at the same time he knew that there were things that did need to happen. He needed to follow a particular script to get to a certain point in his life where he was comfortable changing things. But that's when he began to realize that things might be harder than he thought. There were some things he simply didn't remember. Like, how exactly did he woo Kushina again? Minato was always dense. He was more romantic when he didn't try to be, and that meant that when he was romantic, he tended to forget how he did it. That might be an issue. Minato tried to push it from his mind. Some things are meant to be, he said within himself. No doubt Kushina and I are one of those things, so it will happen. As he jumped, he remembered that at this time, on these days, at this age, he actually needed to be in the academy. If he didn't hurry, he might be late. And so, taking his nickname seriously, Minato raced at the speed of light to the academy. It was so nostalgic being back in this building as a student. As he walked the halls, he remembered he completely forgot his books. Finding his old locker, he stood there before it. He knew he kept some of his stuff in here, at least enough that he might get through the day. The issue was he couldn't remember the code to his lock. What was it, he questioned. That's when Minato decided to close his eyes, take a deep breath, and stop thinking about it. He began thinking about something else. Trying to focus on Kushina, his hands began to move, instinctually turning the dial in the way of the code, opening the locker. Minato smiled. When brain memory fails, muscle memory doesn't. Getting some of his books out, he raced to the homeroom where he would find a seat and sit down. There was nothing that they could teach him here that he didn't already know, but all the same, it was nostalgic. As he sat there, he looked around the class and saw many of the shinobi he knew back as kids again. But as he sat there admiring this, the homeroom teacher walked into the room, calling attention to himself from all of the students. The teacher stepped in and spoke to them, announcing that today was to be a special day. Today was the day that they'd be met with a new student. At the sound of this, Minato perked up. Is today that day, he questioned within himself? The teacher called the exchange student in. A girl with bright crimson hair stepped into the room. He looked at her with surprise, and her gaze returned to him. For a second, she saw her lip the word Minato in realization. It was then that he realized, she remembers me. She remembers me! He could hardly contain himself. He jumped over the desk, running across the heads of the students in front of him, much to their annoyance. Kushina began to run towards him. She jumped up into his arms as Minato spun around with her in a circle. She began to tell him that she had no idea what happened and that she just woke up earlier that morning. Minato explained the same. As the excitement died down between the two, the couple seconds they were talking seemed to extend into minutes between them. That was when their gazes caught more steadily. The two began to share quite the passionate kiss. The entire class let out a collective "ooh" as the teacher, appalled, tried to pry their faces apart. Minato! Kushina! What are you two doing? Minato and Kushina could not be stopped though. It had been years since they'd seen each other, and the flame of their love was as bright as could be. That's when the teacher took more physical means to pry them apart. I'm surprised at you, the teacher said. Both of you, to the Hokage's office, now. And so, Kushina and Minato were led away to the Hokage's office, where Hiruzen sat, looking at the two of them over his clasped hands. Hiruzen took a deep breath and spoke. So, I was told you two disturbed class today in a very unique manner. Shrugging, Minato smiled. I guess we got carried away. Hiruzen looked from Minato to Kushina. What is this then, he asked. Love at first sight, or more? Kushina only arrived in Konoha but a couple of days ago. Kushina then spoke. I was told that it would help me get used to Konoha and the exchange program if I began making friends before I arrived, she said. I began to talk with a pen pal in Konoha, and that person was Minato. That being said, we came to like each other a bit more than expected. Hiruzen took a deep breath. The academy is no place for such outbursts. You're free to continue being friends, but no more of this in our establishment. I will let this go on the grounds that this is your first day, Miss Uzumaki. And you, Minato, I will also spare simply because I spared Kushina. However, this is not to happen again, he said. It would be a shame for two promising shinobi to be washed out of the Ninja Academy program. Hiruzen always had a way to sound tougher than he actually was, especially considering that he was fighting a smile right now. Minato and Kushina both offered a nod of respect before apologizing to him together. "You are free to return to class whenever you wish," he said. The two of them stood and began to make their way out of the office. Back in the main hall, they began to walk toward the classes where they rejoined everyone. They sat at different desks, though it was clear that the two of them could hardly pay attention to anything but each other, and this did not go unnoticed. At recess, their classmates all teased the two of them, mentioning that the squash and tomato had fallen in love. They giggled and laughed before taunting them further. "Minato and Kushina sitting in a tree, Kissing. First comes love, then comes marriage, then comes a baby in the baby carriage." The kids laughed, and Minato worried what Kushina's reaction would be. Her reaction was simply, kissing in a tree sounds romantic. This, of course, was said as a way to reverse the joke on their tormentors. Sometimes when bullies accused Kushina of things, she would often make it sound like she loved the thing that was often treated with disdain. This gave her a name as a dirty-minded individual, but it also stole the fun from taunting her, so the trade-off was well worth it. She then began to chase the boys who taunted them, claiming that she was gonna make out with them too, leaving the children to scream for fear of cooties. Minato laughed as he watched this. She hadn't changed a bit. As school let out, the two of them began to walk home together. Hand in hand, two little doves infatuated with one another. They spoke and caught up. It was like they were falling in love with each other all over again. He took her out to eat, and they stayed out late with each other. And after this, they began to walk home. Getting to their house, he pulled the keys out and stuck them into the door. Won't budge. That's when someone came to the door. "What do you two think you're doing?" an old curmudgeon of a man asked. Minato froze for a moment as he stumbled over his words. It was then that he realized that Kushina and he did not own a house yet. This house was not theirs. It still belonged to the previous owner. It was no wonder the elderly man was upset. It looked like the two of them were trying to break in. And worst of all, there was nothing he could say to explain this. The only thing he could have said was that he had a brain fart, but doing so would mean explaining that they once lived in this house, which wouldn't make sense due to the context of timing. So the best Minato could do was fall back on Kushina, who proceeded to lie through her teeth as easily as anything else. "Sorry to disturb you so late at night, sir. We found these keys and someone told us that they were yours. We considered knocking on the door, but knowing the time of night, we thought it was better just to leave them on your table and go."
"Those ain't my keys,"
the man said with a touch of attitude.
"And even if they were, walking into someone's home uninvited isn't only rude, it's dangerous. Why didn't you just leave them in the mailbox?"
"We were afraid someone might see them and steal them, or worse, use them to rob you," Minato said, catching on to the lie. "I guess it wasn't anything to worry about though, as the person who said these keys belonged to you was obviously wrong." This didn't alleviate the old man's suspicion that it was just two young thieves, but what it did do was offer a possible explanation that served to bring doubt to the situation. Hopefully now the man would not call the police. Reaching toward the keys, he looked at them.
"These aren't my keys, but I'm not about to leave them with you. I'm turning these into the Konoha police force tomorrow. Better than leaving them with you two," he said.
Confiscating the keys, he closed the door and locked it. "Well, damn. Those were my keys," Minato said as he stepped away. "It's a good thing I keep a spare under the mat." It was then that the two of them realized that their homes were in two different directions. Having had so much fun, Minato and Kushina forgot that they lived apart. The two looked away in deep disappointment, Kushina even nearly summoning a tear to her eye as she thought about it. "I guess this is good night," Minato said. "Maybe it doesn't have to be," Kushina replied. Minato looked with a smile. "I doubt that your guardians would go for letting a strange boy stay over at your place for the night." Kushina knew he was right. Maybe I could stay with you," she said. "I think that would be even worse," Minato chuckled. "Why do I need to follow their word anyway?" "Because this is our chance to do things right, Kushina. Our chance to enjoy our lives. We need to follow a certain script. We can't deviate. I must become Hokage, and you must become Jinchuriki. So for now, we can't." Kushina's tear became a bit more visible, though it didn't fall yet. "But it's been so long since we've been together. I don't know if I can be far from you again." Minato smiled and kissed her. "It won't be long before we can be together," he said. "After all, in 10 years we can legally be married, and in 11 we will be. But 11 years is so long. How can we wait so long?" she asked. "Because I'll be waiting with you, right beside you." Finally, that tear dropped. Minato wiped it away. "Hey, you want to know something?" "What?" she asked. "Naruto," Minato said, catching Kushina's attention. "Naruto listened to you. He kept himself clean, and he kept a varied diet, and the last time I spoke to him, he said he had almost no experience with women or drinking. He said Jiraiya had an issue with all those vices, but taught him not to do those things, and Naruto didn't. Our son was and will be a great man, and in a few years from now, we'll give birth to him again. You will carry him, I'll dote upon you both, and then as you bring him into the world, I'll be there. There will be peace. Nobody will ever hurt you again. Just a short period of time, he said as he held her close. A short period of time to wait in exchange for a long life of happiness together. Kushina seemed comforted by this. Okay, but you gotta visit me every day and remind me of how we're still together. Minato smiled. I promise. And so they let go of each other for the night. As Minato lay in bed, staring at his ceiling, he felt the loneliness of a bed for one. His eyes, looking out the window, caught a glimpse of the moon. On the other side of the village, Kushina's eyes were looking at the same moon. Oh, what a melancholic orb. A pale ghost in the sky, cold and bleached, only bringing bittersweet memories. The moon had that amplifying effect. Just as its gravity affected the ebb and flow of the tides, its presence also had an effect on emotions. In times of togetherness, its beauty brought hearts closer, but in times of loneliness, it floated there, mockingly, a show of romance to those who had no partner by their side. It was enough to cause Kushina to grit her teeth. Turning to her side to look away, her voice whispered, "Dumb moon." She faced the wall where only her shadow lingered, reminding her of the oneness of her physical self at this moment. Burying her face in her pillow, she didn't realize that the promise of love would be so hard to wait for. She questioned if she could survive long enough. Sleep was not something to come easy for either of them. The day after, the two would get together again, obviously tired, and explain how they both had the same issue. As time passed, things continued to go their course. Minato was assigned to Jiraiya's team, and Kurama was officially to be transferred to Kushina. Before the transfer, Mito Uzumaki, the wife of the late first Hokage, took her aside and brought her to a very special tower. This tower was built by the Uzumaki within Konoha as an honor to their clan and village, which now seemed to be all but defunct. As she climbed the tower with Mito, she spoke. "You know, Hiruzen was always such a kind boy growing up. He had ambitions and a fire in his soul, but his heart was always too big. He cared a bit too much. He and I used to talk so much about the meaning of life and concepts that he could never talk to anyone else about. His mother passed when he was young, and his father was a very hard man. Little Hiruzen never had the chance to talk about his feelings much, so he would often turn to me. Even still, he speaks with me often about things he sees, and you know what he told me?" she asked. Kushina looked at Mito questioningly. Mito continued, "That there's two little hearts lit aflame for each other at the academy." Kushina began to blush as she knew what that meant. Mito smiled. "He told me about two very kind children whose reaction to seeing each other was less like new friends and more like old lovers reunited. He said that he had no doubt that it was meant to be." Mito continued walking up the spiral staircase to the roof of the tower. Kushina followed her. "You know, people sometimes underestimate how important love is to a person. Despite us having but one word for it, there are many facets of love, and nobody can exist without having experienced at least one facet. There may be some who claim to have never experienced before, but even they have, though they simply are unaware. There are many types of love, and among them all, there is one that boasts itself as one of the most special. Some may live with it, some may live without, the ever-elusive love between man and woman, where two become one, and one becomes three. Logic goes out the window for that one, but like some drug, it keeps us entrenched in a confusing chaos that some people spend their entire lives contemplating, yet never understanding. I can vouch for such people as I am one, but if there's anything I know about this kind of love, it's very special. It's a rare type of love that some believe they found when they haven't. Some believe they haven't found when they have. It's rare enough to be a once-in-a-lifetime situation, and even rarer twice in a lifetime. The human being is designed with such connections in mind." Kushina listened to this woman. In a younger age, this all would have gone over her head, but having come from a more experienced place, her heart couldn't help but pay attention to the older woman's words. Playing dumb, Kushina spoke. "What does this have to do with me?" Mito smiled. "My dear, that boy you like, Minato Namikaze. If you truly love him, then never let him go." Kushina smiled. "As if you had to tell me that." Mito laughed and pulled the girl into a hug. I'm happy for you, Kushina. Love is a treasure. Hold it close. And so she did. Having had the Nine Tails sealed away within her, Kushina found the courage to resist its strength through her love with Minato, who was always there when she needed him. The night she was to be taken by Kumogakure, she stayed awake, ready to fight, but she didn't need to as Minato was there. He defeated the Kumonin with relative ease before moving on from her. Every day she found herself falling more and more in love with him. Her heart swooned for him day in and day out. His intense desire to be with her again was like something out of a fairy tale. Time passed. Days turned to weeks, then to months, then to years. The older they got, the closer they got, the harder it became to stay away. Kushina connected with her friends once again. She connected with Makoto Uchiha, a dear and close friend from her times as a shinobi. They tended to go out for fun. I don't know, that Fugaku guy is really quite dry, Makoto said, questioning her own relationship. It was everything Kushina could do to keep from laughing when she heard such things. The Second Shinobi World War was still raging at this time, and the time off with each other was something quite rare. Kushina, being a Jinchuriki, was the hammer of their forces due to possessing a tailed beast. Her ability to make use of its power was pretty much useless as the beast was so strong, and she was only very good at keeping it at bay. So to say she never really left the village was the truth. She just didn't have what it took to face greater shinobi, and they couldn't risk her being killed and losing the tailed beast, so Hiruzen believed it best to just leave her in the village. She had not had the chance to see Minato in quite a long time. Nearly a year due to how intense the fighting had become, but she knew he was slated to come back soon, so she waited patiently for that news. As she sat there enjoying her life, that's when the door was knocked on. She got up quickly from her seat and ran to the door. Opening it, she saw a pair of men standing there. 2 Konoha shinobi. "Ms. Kushina Uzumaki?" they asked. Immediately, Kushina's heart sank. She fell on her rear. "No, don't tell me," she said. The 2 men seemed shocked at her reaction and reached down. No, calm down. Minato's not dead." They lifted her up. "Then why would you do it like this?" she asked. Honestly, we weren't thinking. We've been serving with Minato, and when he got wounded, he..." "Wounded?" she said. "Yes, but it's not bad," one of the men said. "He asked us to come to you and tell you that he was okay and in the village again. We are here to escort you to..." Kushina rushed past. She ran through the streets of Konoha until she reached the hospital. Entering the front door, she ran to the reception area where she found a nurse. "Where is he?" she demanded. The nurse, terrified by what could only be described as a red-headed demon, asked the only question she could. "Who?" "Minato Namikaze! He's in room 308, she shouted. Kushina ran through the halls, up the stairs, skipping 3 steps at a time. She eventually reached the 3rd floor and raced to Minato's room. As soon as she got to the door, she saw Minato sitting up in bed talking with someone else, another shinobi. Suddenly, they both turned to see Kushina. Minato immediately knew what was coming. "Inoichi, will you give us a moment?" he asked. "You don't need to tell me twice," he said. He squeezed past her and out the door, closing it from behind. Minato was silent. He then smiled. "I see you got the news. How could you send those 2 to my house like that?" "What, Shikaku and Choza? They're a pair of awesome dudes. Saved my life. Did they do something wrong?" "When they got there, I thought they were casualty notifiers." Minato's eyes gleamed with understanding, his shaky voice producing a simple, "Oh," to acknowledge how she might have understood it that way. "I thought they were going to tell me you were dead. They told me it wasn't true, but just as I picked myself up off my ass, they told me you were wounded." Minato looked to the side. Shikaku was normally so measured. I forgot there used to be a time when he was a lot more laid back and lazy. Kushina stood there, her face displaying wrath as tears streamed down it. "I thought that you were gone," she said. "We haven't seen each other in nearly a year, and this is the first real message I got from it." "Well, Ku, I'm sorry it happened that way, but it's not really my fault. I had to tell you I was back and prepare you to know that I was hurt. All I could do was explain it to you. I didn't know what else to do. You could have called me or messaged me personally instead of sending the G.I. Joes to my doorstep. I have expected them to hand me a folded flag. Kushina, do you know how scared I was? I'm pretty sure I mowed down 3 kids and a granny just to get here." "Kushina!" Minato's voice boomed. Suddenly she clammed up, her face displaying surprise and slight pain. Minato then spoke again. "Look around. Do you see a phone in this room? Do you see a computer or even a friggin' carrier pigeon? There was no way for me to contact you. But with my left arm and leg all stowed up, I couldn't get to a phone to call you. But..." Minato laid back. I did the best I could. I can't control how you perceive something. I'm sorry it scared you, but out of the two of us, I'm the one laid up right now. I've got other things on my mind. Kushina turned around to face away from him. You're right. I'm sorry. Minato's eyes cut back to her as his head rested on the pillow. His face no longer displayed the rage he felt ashamed to have accidentally unleashed a moment earlier. It's been very hard, she said, to have this second chance with you, to see the love of my life across the room and have to keep waiting for what seems like forever to have him back. You think it's any easier for me? Do you know why I got hurt in the first place? Kushina was silent. Minato spoke. I wasn't focused on the mission when I should have been. I was busy thinking about getting to come home, to be with you again. And because I wasn't paying attention, I didn't notice a paper bomb on the tree I was jumping to. Fell and hit the ground. Ambushed. Literally only escaped because Ino Shikacho heard the explosion and came in to rescue me. Kushina opened the door and stopped. I'm glad you're okay, she said. I'll just leave you to rest then. Kushina, wait! She left, closing the door behind her. Minato looked back up at the ceiling with a sigh. What did I do? Kushina walked home. She was down in the dumps for a while. Didn't take long for Makoto to phone in. Word about what had happened spread quickly. Whether Ino Shikacho couldn't keep their mouths shut, or the doctors were overheard talking about it, either way, word spread that Minato was all laid up in the hospital, and that led to Makoto being worried for Kushina. Calling her up, she spoke. I heard about what happened to Minato. Is he okay? She asked. Yeah, he'll be fine. The doctors said it was a low-level fracture in his humerus and tibia. They've been working on it, and they think he'll be able to get home soon for rest. Are you okay? Makoto asked. Kushina was quiet for a moment before speaking. Of course. You don't sound so certain. Is everything okay? Makoto asked. Kushina was silent for a moment longer before continuing. The way I received the news was like a death notification. 2 shinobi came to my doorstep, inquiring about me with news about Minato. It was so formal. It seemed so grim. I couldn't help but think that it was. Then they told me he was still alive, but wounded. I panicked and I yelled at Minato for sending them like that, and he got mad. Bastard. No, he's not. He's just hurt. And I was panicking and making things worse. Listen, Ku. Minato's a great guy, but he's dense. He has a high battle IQ, but a very low everything else IQ. It's okay to admit what he did wasn't right. But he didn't have a choice. He didn't have access to a phone. And the guys who he sent didn't? I really did act out though, Kushina said. Makoto sighed. Listen, you both made a mistake. Maybe you acted out, and maybe you had a reason for it. And maybe that reason was because you weren't properly informed. And maybe Minato had a reason for that. But all the same, what happened wasn't right. At the very least, you had more of a reason to act the way you did than Minato's guys. So don't be so hard on yourself. Let go of that moment. If Minato snapped at you, then maybe he's just stressed out. Let it go this time and just focus on the positives. Even if it scared you today, what you received was not a casualty notification. Your boyfriend is okay, and he's gonna have an extended vacation now for rest and healing, so I'd call that a win. Kushina thought about it. I guess you're right. It's best to let that go, I suppose. Atta girl. Now what do you say we go out on the town or something? A couple days later, Minato was allowed to be wheeled out of the hospital. And as he came out in the wheelchair, Kushina was there, waiting for him. Minato smiled, but then it faded as he remembered what he had said. But that didn't stop Kushina. Her smile brought a warmth like the sun. She approached him. He looked away from her. I'm sorry about how I spoke to you the other day. You had every right to be upset. I shouldn't have. She pressed her lips against his to quiet him. As she pulled back, she spoke. It's okay, Minato. I was upset because I love you, and nothing you do or say is going to change the way I feel about you. It'll change the way I feel about myself. Kushina offered a bit of a giggle. What you think about yourself doesn't matter to me, because I know what you are, even when you forget. She grabbed the handles of the wheelchair and began to push him back towards his apartment. When they got to the building, the issue of stairs became apparent to them both. How to get him up was a question. The solution was simple. Kushina, with all of her strength, lifted Minato up from his wheelchair and carried him up the stairs in her arms, as if this were the inverse of a marriage tradition. Once there, she helped sit him back down. Any other man would have been embarrassed, but not Minato. Love was not something to be embarrassed about, nor was it weakness. As she brought him to his apartment, she opened the door and backed him in. Wheeling him to his bedroom, she helped him get into bed, helping him get into something more comfortable while doing so. From here, it was Nurse Kushina all day, helping him with every need, from food to chores to self-grooming. His face was rarely as smooth as Kushina made it. Even if years had passed, she was still good at nuking that beard stubble as always. As the night wore on, Minato knew it was time to wind down and time for Kushina to leave, but she crawled into bed with him. "I'm not leaving you," she said. Minato spoke, "But your guards will wonder where you are. You'll get in trouble." "Screw the guards and screw the trouble. I've waited long enough to be by your side. I'm not waiting a day longer, Minato. I may be the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, but I'm a fully grown woman now, and I am able to decide who I spend my days and nights with, and even old man Hiruzen can't stop me." "Are you sure?" he asked. "I don't want your life to become harder just because of me. My life has been hard enough without you. I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm sticking by you from this point on." And so, despite it being around a year early, Kushina and Minato got permission from the Hokage to marry, and that's exactly what they did. Eventually, the war came to a close, and Minato was awarded the title of Jonin. With this new title, Minato would be offered the chance to become a mentor, and he would accept. Under his care were Kakashi Hatake, Rin Nohara, and Obito Uchiha. As Minato thought back on all he had seen and learned, a brand new light was shed upon this team. Obito Uchiha, the fulcrum on which the entire future hinged. If Minato failed him again, the future would repeat, and he could not allow this to happen. And so he mentored them for quite some time, teaching them, allowing them to take the Chunin exams, to which Kakashi was the first and only to receive the title. A year later, Obito would also achieve it, but only on the day that Kakashi obtained his Jonin rank. But despite that, Minato remembered the wrongness of this day, and so when he gifted Kakashi a special kunai that possessed his Flying Raijin sealing formula on it, he was sure to go to Obito as well. Kneeling down before the boy, he spoke. "Little birdie told me someone became a Chunin today." Obito's eyes lit up with the feeling of vindication and acknowledgement, though it quickly faded into jealousy and self-loathing. Not as impressive as Jonin, though. Minato couldn't help but smile. An accomplishment is an accomplishment, Obito. Rivalry is good to have when it serves a constructive purpose, but when it becomes a weapon to hurt yourself or someone else, that's when one must learn to let it go. Run your own race. Perhaps you're not a Jonin right now like Kakashi is, but you are a Chunin, and you've become one at the age of 11. That's a lot rarer than you know. Many children your age are only just now becoming Genin. Some children don't even become Chunin until they're well into their teens. You're well ahead of the curve, Obito, and that's something to be proud of. Maybe you're not as high-ranking as Kakashi now, and that's okay. Kakashi's a different beast altogether. He even surpassed the age with which I became Jonin. But you know what? You surpassed the age that I became Chunin by a lot as well. So don't let it get to you, Obito. Even if it takes you longer to rank up, it doesn't mean you're not as good, nor does it mean you won't still be stronger. It just means that you're blooming later. But a secret I've learned in my years, the flowers that bloom the latest always tend to be the most beautiful. As he finished his speech to the boy, he presented a kunai. Even through the orange-tinted goggles, Minato could see the tears flowing. And even if he couldn't, the face Obito was making and the harsh sniffing he could hear laid bare his heart for any to see. "Thanks, sensei," he said. Minato offered the boy a hug. Obito was raised by his grandmother, and as such had no father figure in his life. He craved validation, someone to teach him and tell him he was doing good. Perhaps that's why he became a shinobi in the first place. For a heart so full and open, it made no sense to Minato why he would want to ruin it with the job he now had. That's why Minato believed that Obito was simply seeking direction. He craved to be something better than he was, and it wasn't enough to teach himself. He sought a strong person, someone to model himself after, and Minato, despite knowing what it was that Obito could become, felt blessed to be in the position he was. After all, having had time to understand the complexities of raising children, he realized that any child could become like Obito if not properly raised or cared for. That's the reason why Minato made the decision to never make the same mistake again. Obito would not suffer the same way that he had before. Madara would not get his hands on him. Madara would simply have to die of old age without obtaining an apprentice, because Obito was now off limits. But the fateful day of the mission they had to undertake arrived. As Minato had set up the mission, he received orders to move to a new site, and as such, Minato decided to reschedule the Kanobi Bridge mission. However, this decision was met with protests. "Come on, Minato-sensei, I can handle this mission fine," Kakashi said. "I'm a Jonin now. I can lead this team in and take out the bridge while you help the squads trapped at the front lines." However, Minato disagreed. You may be a Jonin now, Kakashi, but you're not ready to handle a mission of this magnitude. This mission we're undertaking at Kanabi Bridge is a very important mission that could see the end of the war. I know that. That's why I'm saying to let me go do it. If we postpone, it might be too late, and it could cost us the war. Don't be over-dramatic. The supply lines aren't going anywhere. We can take a 3-hour detour and nothing will change. Sounds like my father, Kakashi said. And we both know how that turned out. Minato was silent. You want to let me do this. If you hold me back, I'll report it. Minato turned his head to look back. Your actions and words in this moment only reinforce my sentiments. You're mentioning Sakumo so frivolously. You may have known him as your father, but I was the one who served with him. I know what kind of shinobi he was. I don't care what the village says. He was a good man and a greater shinobi than I. If I sound like Sakumo, then good. I'd crave to be half the ninja he was, because not only was he loyal to his men, but he was dedicated to his village. If you're going to report me, then do it. All it'll do is embarrass you when I remind them that you're still under my command and are questioning my orders. We'll see where your Jonin career goes then. If we're doing it by the book, then the book dictates you follow your senior commanding officer's words without question. Are you questioning me? Kakashi quickly shut up after that statement. The Kanabi Bridge mission is too important to leave in the hands of a green Jonin, regardless of how skilled and talented they are. No, we'll go together, but only after completing this sub-objective. Do you understand? Yes, Sensei, all 3 students said. This was rather rough, and Minato understood that, but unlike him, they were not blessed with innate foreknowledge of what would occur this day. None of them needed to die. None of them needed to be hurt. Obito needed to live, and so too did Rin Nohara. If Minato could do this, he would kill the Akatsuki in the cradle. Obito was the inheritor of Madara's will, and the executioner of his plans. If Obito was to not turn his back on Konoha, then everything Madara had planned would be for nothing, and would go to waste without him. That was what had to happen this time, and Minato would ensure that it did. As they left the point on the map they were supposed to be at, they began to swing further north. As they got there, Minato issued orders. There's gonna be many people pinned down. Some are grievously injured. I need you 3 to find the ones who are wounded and help them get to safety. I'll buy you time, he said. Let me help you, Minato-sensei. I have a new technique that might be able to help us. Now's not the time for untested ninjutsu, Kakashi. You're a skilled warrior, and I have no doubt that you could keep up with me, but I am more than enough for this task, and what's important is that we get this done quickly, and you can help ensure that. That way, we don't have to hold them back for long. The quicker we get through this mission, the sooner we can get back to the Kanabi Bridge mission. Sound good? The 3 nodded. Yes, Minato-sensei. Minato smiled. Good. When I begin fighting, get to work. Minato then jumped down. He rushed to the left and to the right, avoiding explosions and the destruction caused by the kunai with paper bombs attached. Minato kept his mind in the now. He could not worry about the future. He had a task to perform, and if he wanted that happy ending, he needed to make it happen. As he dodged about, he was sure to throw his kunai around to give him plenty of places to hop to when he was using his flying Raijin. To ensure that he had enough space, he threw one into the air and then teleported to it as it reached the full height of its trajectory. From there, while in the air, he began spinning and tossing kunai around to ensure that there was some everywhere. He threw a few into the enemy lines too. From there, he teleported straight in and activated Sage Mode to give him a boost in power. He began plowing through squad after squad of Iwanin. The terror in the eyes of the shinobi was evident, as Minato had to be the worst thing they'd ever seen. To them, this technique was named for himself, because they began to think that they might have been facing the god of thunder himself. Minato's speed and strength, as well as his ability to teleport, left the Iwanin wondering how many people they were fighting, as it was impossible for a single man to be in all of these places at the same time. Those who remained could see clearly now that it was just one man. Emboldened by the fact Minato was one man, they all rushed at him, which was their greatest mistake. With what almost seemed to be a single movement, his kunai slit the throats of all those in his way. As he stood there among the bodies, he contemplated how truly dark a life it was to be a shinobi, and began to wonder if the normalization of such a job was what had brought so much darkness to the world. War was a nasty business, but the shinobi way had not done anything more than contribute to that darkness. Minato could see it. Regardless of what he thought he was doing, he still killed all of those men. And that wasn't going to stop here. He heard a scream in the distance. It was Rin. Obito stood there, holding the special kunai Minato had given him. One surviving Iwanin had grabbed Rin and was holding a kunai to her neck. "Let her go," Obito demanded.
"I won't stop. Not until every single one of you Konoha dogs are dead," he said.
"Let her go," Obito said. He threw the kunai at the man's head, but he dodged it easily. What he wasn't prepared for was that Minato would teleport to the kunai just as it got behind him, plunging it into the man's heart from behind. As the man began to fall, he felt Minato's hand gripping his wrist, guiding his hand away from Rin's throat. As the man fell with his last breath, he cursed Minato and Konoha as a whole. Rin ran to Obito, who held and comforted her. "Thank you, Minato-sensei," Obito said quietly. "No problem. Are the others safe?" Obito nodded. "Good. We'll take a short break to get our bearings and then make our way to Kanabi Bridge to finish the job." And that's exactly what they did. Getting to the bridge, they snuck under the bearings of the bridge and began to plant their explosives. Once this was done, they moved out of the way. Minato would activate the explosives and the entire bridge would go up. With this done, they'd begin to head back to the village for some peace and quiet. There was more than just rest waiting for Minato when he got there, though. After dropping Obito off at his grandmother's house, he felt like celebrating. This was going to change a lot of things in the future, and ensure the best outcome for everyone. As time passed further, Minato and Kushina had another reason to celebrate. The long-awaited time had come. They'd been so nervous. What if it didn't happen? What if they messed something up? The questions and doubts in their heads were quickly eradicated when the two realized the truth. Kushina was pregnant. Every morning and every night, they would whisper into Kushina's tummy to Naruto, telling him how he was going to grow up big and strong. After the end of the Third Shinobi World War, Minato was named as 4th Hokage after Hiruzen stepped down. No longer having the time to watch over Kushina as much as he wished he had, he would request that not only Kakashi, but Obito and Rin watch over Kushina. This wasn't in an attempt to teach anyone about lessons of life or any meaning. No. This was simply because, after everything Minato had experienced in the past 32 years combined, he couldn't help but be paranoid. And with such an easy mission, he knew that Obito and Rin together would be safe, especially under Kushina's watch. Due to these things, Minato's work as Hokage was accomplished with gusto, believing him to be the best Hokage since Hashirama Senju. Though, after the way Hiruzen ended the Third Shinobi World War, you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who would consider Hiruzen wise. Anyone but Minato. Minato knew Hiruzen was wise, and that he accomplished what he believed was right, even if the village disagreed. The same was true for Sakumo. Hiruzen was kind and loving, and his #1 goal was to preserve as much life as possible, regardless of the invisible lines drawn on a map. Minato could understand the philosophy, but he also knew that the people of Konoha were hurt to see their beloved ones perish in the war, and feel absolutely no gain was brought by it. This was the pain of the world, and the darkness Shinobi brought to it. War was often a necessary evil, as there were just some men you could not live with, and when such men threatened you and your people, you had to act for the best interests of your own nation. Politics were a structure with many variables, and oftentimes the strongest debates were of how to properly balance it. All Minato could do was the best he could do, and going with his guts and sense of morality over the roars of the people on either side of the aisle was where he tried to stand. This institution was man-made, run by men, flawed men, and as such, it itself was a flawed system. And as Minato stood by the window, watching the sun set on the village, he smiled. There were always going to be dissenters, those who viewed his work with contempt, but Minato could not lie that as a Hokage, he had the highest approval rating seen in years. And as the numbers kept rising, it kept bringing itself closer to proving the truth that maybe, just maybe, he was a more popular Hokage than even Hashirama Senju. Not that he would dare hold himself to that level. He did not feel worthy to compare himself to the founder of the village, but as a Hokage, he did feel himself worthy enough to view him as an elder peer. Minato was one of the most powerful men in the world, and he needed to carry himself as such. But the facade broke when word came to him. "Sir, your wife's water just broke. She's going into labor. I've been requested to escort you to the place of delivery." Minato's face grew pale as he nodded. "Good. Give me a moment to make a call first." Minato walked through the brisk night air until he reached the old stony stronghold, a bunker under a small mountain that descended deep. Caverns and tunnels went in all directions to confuse intruders and those who sought to do harm, designed with the function of defense against large waves of enemies in mind. With the structure of the base set up to give small numbers of soldiers the ability to bottleneck larger armies and give them a fairer chance to survive. This was the Grinder, the Death Hallway. The thought of its name and purpose sent shivers down his spine, which only grew the more he thought about what happened the last time he and his wife were here. He had nothing to fear. Obito had not turned on the leaf and was still here, as was Rin, meaning that they would not face the same thing they did before. But for some reason, Minato couldn't shake the feeling that he and his wife were in danger. That's why Minato was sure to be extra prepared. Already wearing his flak jacket and his Yondaime Haori, he was dressed like a man going to war, rather than a man going to attend the birth of his firstborn. This left all those in the Hokage's procession confused, though Minato told them it was equal parts ceremony and the overactive imagination of a soon-to-be father, so they respected it. As soon as he came into the room, Biwako asked Minato to get Kushina and prepared to hold the seal closed. Minato, however, refused and revealed Rin Nohara, who'd been training as a medical nin, and with sealing just for this specific moment. Biwako was wary, but trusted Minato's judgment. That was until she noticed Kakashi and Obito there as well. "What are those two young men doing in here? This is a highly private position Kushina's in." "It's okay," Kushina said through winces of pain. "Let them stay. I'm okay with it." "But Kushina, you're about to do one of the hardest things in your life. I'm against making a spectacle of it." "They're family," she said. "I trust them. It's important to me that they're here for the birth of my child. They've shadowed me since I discovered I was pregnant. They helped me put together the baby's room, bed, and helped me get toys for him. They're as much his aunt and uncles as anyone of blood, and I refuse to have this baby without them." "I don't think you have much of a choice in that one, Miss Kushina," one of the nurses said. "You're already at 10 and the baby's at +5 right now. The baby's coming." Biwako looked over at Minato and the two other men with a scowl of indignation. Minato was too focused on the door, Obito was pretending not to notice by whistling, and Kakashi was simply just staring at Biwako. "Are you certain, Lady Kushina? I'll kick them all out if that's what you want," Biwako said. "I'm sure, Biwa. They're here to ensure everything is safe. Just trust me, okay?" Biwako, with a sigh of defeat, smiled at the woman who had become one of her closest friends in the past years and nodded. "If this is what you want, dear, I will oblige. But now we focus. It's time to give birth." Minato looked back at Kakashi and Obito. "Okay, boys, keep your eyes open, all corners of the room." "Is there a particular reason why, Minato-sensei?" Obito asked. "Yes. My wife is the Jinchuriki of the Nine-Tails, and birth is when the seal is at its weakest. I heard rumors that someone was out to take the Nine-Tails, and if they try, now is when it would happen." Obito gasped with realization. "That's why you're dressed up in your shinobi gear." Minato nodded. Obito raised his goggles and displayed his Sharingan, each containing 2 tomoe. "You can count on us, Minato-sensei. Nothing will touch Lady Kushina. That's a genuine Obito promise." Minato smiled. "I'm holding you to it." And so they kept their eyes open. Minato stood close to Kushina, holding her hand, offering support however he could, all while staying aware of their surroundings. Keeping his senjutsu active, Kushina began to cry, not just because she was giving birth, but because she didn't like Minato looking at her with those scary eyes. She was pregnant, so her hormones were a little everywhere at the moment, leading to some emotional instability. But all the same, Minato couldn't turn it off and focus on her at the same time. He was using the sensory abilities of Sage Mode to keep his eyes on the things his eyes could not be kept on. So what Minato decided to do instead was simply close his eyes for her and kiss her hand and whisper that everything was going well. This seemed to please Kushina enough that she concentrated on the birth. Rin was beginning to grunt. "This is a lot tougher than I trained for," she said. Minato put his hand on Rin's to funnel some of his senjutsu to her to give her an extra boost. "You've got this, Rin." It was at this moment that Minato sensed something. His eyes opened. "Obito, door!" Obito turned his Sharingan toward the entrance. "I see it," he said. "I'm on you," Kakashi said. Rushing toward the door, they were surprised to see a man seemingly made of black tar. "What the hell is that?" Obito questioned. "Dead, that's what it is," Kakashi said as he formed the hand signs for Great Fireball Jutsu. Releasing a flame, the black substance retreated into a crack in the floor. "Track it," Kakashi said. Obito began scanning. "It's there," he said, pointing to a crack in the middle of the room. As it began to form into a shape, it was suddenly clotheslined by Minato in his Sage Mode. He recognized this thing. It was Zetsu, the last loose end to tie up. Taking a page from Kakashi's book, Minato formed a Chidori in his hand and began electrocuting the creature to disrupt its chemical makeup. As it tried to recover from this, it began to slither away to another crack, but Minato was ready. Throwing a kunai into the crack, he teleported to it, and before Zetsu could escape, he pressed the Rasengan into the pile of goo, ripping it apart. Minato called for Kakashi and Obito to come in and scorch the entire area of the room to ensure that there'd be nothing left for it to regenerate from. At about this time, Kushina finished giving birth and Minato cut the cord. Bringing the baby up to Kushina, they were both congratulated on a healthy baby boy. "What are you going to name him?" Biwako asked. "We're going to name him Naruto." From here, family life with Naruto truly began. Minato learned to better balance his work life with his home life. Due to the Nine Tails having never escaped, the Uchiha were never brought under suspicion. This didn't mean that there weren't conspiracies against them though, but Minato put those conspiracies down quickly and removed the one who had caused them from power. As the Hyuga were then targeted by the Kumonin who had come to negotiate peace, their envoy died trying to kidnap Hinata to take her Byakugan. The Raikage demanded compensation lest the war continue. However, Minato reversed it on him, stating that Kumo had committed a war crime known as perfidy. Konoha stated that it and its allies would pursue the Raikage and eradicate his village over this should they continue to threaten, and having faced Minato in battle once before, the Raikage knew Minato could do it. He was one of few shinobi with a run-on-sight order, and there was a reason for that, and so the Raikage dropped the case and consented to peace. However, Orochimaru was still committing atrocities, and when discovered was confronted by Minato. Despite Minato being a kind man, he did not have the same connection to Orochimaru as Hiruzen, and was sure to not allow him to escape justice. From there, nothing of note really happened, with Madara's will destroyed in the cradle and all threats to Konoha stopped by Minato's quick thinking. They had peace for many years. And due to that, Minato finally had enough time to spend with Naruto, raising him to be the kind of man he already knew Naruto was. As he grew, Naruto would train, becoming a better shinobi than he had been when Minato last met him. And as the days came for Minato to retire, he would happily give over his position as Hokage to Naruto, electing to stay back with Kushina to help Hinata raise Boruto and Himawari, giving Naruto the freedom and advice to better balance his family life and his life as Hokage. The life Minato and Kushina had waited for was finally here, and they were both very pleased with it. And that's where I'm gonna call it. This video was an interesting one. We often do these types of videos where the heroes are reborn with their memories, but rarely do we do it where more than one person is reborn. It was refreshing, and honestly, it was pleasing to have it be both Minato and Kushina, as it meant that I could explore their love life a little more. But what did you think? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell to be notified when the next videos drop. And be sure to check out these other videos. I'm sure you'll enjoy them. Until next time, peace out.